Hello and welcome to episode 9 of Talk of the Town, the Talk of the Town podcast, brought to you by Holzer Health System and the Gay County Chamber of Commerce. I'm Josh Wellington, your executive director, and I am joined today by Chris Farver from Tri-State Smart Home Solutions.
Yes, that's correct. Thank you, Josh.
No problem. Before we talk about kind of all of the services you offer, I mean, people hear home solutions, and you do home inspections, but you don't do just home inspections. So let's talk about kind of how you got into the home solutions field first, and then kind of what you do under that umbrella.
Yes, thanks, Josh. I spent 30 years in IT. That seems like an odd thing to also be someone in home solutions. But during the time when I was in IT as a person, as an individual outside of my IT career, I was involved in a lot of construction, a lot of building, built my own homes before. I built a log home that we lived in and raised our boys in for 18 years. And I've been the general contractor on several construction projects. And when you build your own house, you learn a lot, and
Right.
you still have to go through code inspections and so forth. And so over probably 25 or 30 years, I've had a lot of experience, with my own projects as well as parents, grandparents, buildings, and so forth.
So when did you make it an official business, so to speak?
In 2018, I decided to leave the IT corporate world in 2017 and wanted to pursue a career where I was self-employed, a little more management of my own time and skills and personal interests, rather than being driven by corporate needs. My wife and I decided we would do something on our own. So we, in 2018 is when we launched the business, and decided, because of where we are located, to be able to serve the needs of Ohio, Southern Ohio, West Virginia, and Kentucky. So we're licensed in all three of those states.
So when people talk about home inspections, obviously you think when you're buying a home, things like that. Is it just when somebody is looking to buy a home that you get that call, or are there other times when a home inspection may be needed?
Yes. I would say a very large percentage of our home inspection business are related to a real estate transaction. But we've literally done what's called a pre-listing inspection. So someone who's considering selling their home sometime in the near future, and they would like to be proactive and know what their house is going to need.
Right.
And so they can help it. So we'll go in and do a complete inspection and talk to them and walk through, ideas on what they might want to do to make their home more attractive, to make it less costly to maintain, or even less costly for the buyer, and to help them kind of make some decisions on what they might want to what they might want to do in advance versus what they might want to have their seller's home inspector, their purchaser's home inspector find at the time. Plus, it also speeds up the transaction. So if you already have had a home inspection, you've already corrected a lot of the safety issues and so forth, then when you put your home on the market, the whole process will go much more quickly. You're going to attract more buyers. Everything's just going to go much more quickly, as opposed to getting an offer, waiting for the home inspection, and then you're in negotiations because there's a lot of things that maybe you needed to have done. In addition, we do oftentimes have people just come in and do an inspection, not even with anything in conjunction with a real estate transaction, because they want to live in their home longer. So let's just say they're getting up in their years, and they want to make sure that the home is safe to live in. And so we can come in and do inspections, I call it aging in place, to help them understand what kind of upgrades they might want to do or consider, or just to get their home safe, based upon modern standards.
You don't just deal specifically with structural inspections, but you also do some other kind of inspections as well. So I'd like to kind of touch on that a little bit. The first being the mold inspection. Kind of what does that entail? What should people be looking for? And if you do find that kind of a situation, kind of what is the treatment process to get that fixed for the consumer?
Okay, yeah, so we do mold inspections and mold testing. We do not do mold remediation, and we've chosen not to do remediation, meaning fix the mold. That way you can have confidence in us that we're not going to just come in and say, hey, we found mold and now we need to do a large remediation project. We as a business have consciously decided not to do that. But what we do is we do a complete inspection. So a lot of time there's various potential scenarios. One scenario might be a real estate transaction, where the home they're buying, maybe a member of the family has known allergies to mold, and they want to make sure that the home does not have any mold in it that they're purchasing. And so what we will do is oftentimes in conjunction with a home inspection, but many times separate in individual transaction. We inspect the entire house for from the crawl space, basement, everywhere inside the house that there's where I've seen mold or where mold is likely to grow underneath sinks, tubs. Inside the furnace is a very common area. A lot of times, if the residents don't change their furnace filter often enough, you'll get lint and dog hair and just things from living in a house that'll accumulate on the air conditioning coil. And then what happens is when you turn your air conditioner on next spring, that all that matter that's collected on the coil will get wet, and it actually puts more moisture in the house. It can put mold spores throughout the house. And in the attic, a lot of people don't also realize that the house is a system. So if you have a wet crawl space or you have a wet basement, all that moisture is going to rise up through your house. So you're going to have it within your house. You'll oftentimes see that with moisture around your windows, especially in the wintertime or even in the summertime with the contrast. You'll see moisture. You'll see a little bit of mildew, what looks like mildew or mold around the edges of your windows. That's often an indication you have high moisture in the house. Well, that just keeps on going up into the attic. And so a lot of times if the attic's doesn't have really good ventilation in it and so forth, you could actually have mold in your attic and never know it because no one hardly goes in their crawl space or their attic.
Right.
So we'll look through all of those areas. Most common, everywhere where the mold needs two things. It needs food and it needs moisture to live. And so food for mold is typically, like, they love wood. Wood is one of the most favorite foods of mold. But oftentimes we'll see it, believe it or not, on leather furniture, Naugahyde furniture, old like mantle fireplaces, like where the old varnish and stains and so forth. Mold seems to accumulate on that often. And again, and so then they need the moisture, right? So if it's a moist area, which again, crawl spaces are often very moist, and then mold expands through giving off mold spores. So mold may start off as a single mold spore that came in from the outside through a crawl space vent or through through just having your windows open. And then it gets in, and if it has the conditions it needs inside your house, then it's going to grow. And then
Right.
it'll keep growing and giving off mold spores, and it'll go throughout the house every time your furnace kicks on or your air conditioner kicks on. So what we do if we find it, so we'll look and do that complete inspection, and if we don't find any signs of it, in other words, we physically don't see any evidence of it, we have the ability to do air samples. So we can do air quality samples. And we typically recommend one on each level. We never do a air sample inside the crawl space. There's, in a sense, always mold in a crawl space.
Right.
It's just a matter of to what extent. And even if we don't find mold in a crawl space, our mold inspections give recommendations on things someone should do to ensure their home never gets mold. So we do include that even if we don't find it. But say, for example, you have a basement, first floor, second floor. We would recommend an air sample in the basement, one on the first floor, one on the second floor. And we always must take one on the outside. What we call a control sample must be taken outside of the home, because we send all of our mold samples to a laboratory that we work with, Pro Labs out of Florida. And they actually the lab has to try to grow the mold and to determine that it actually is mold and what kind of mold it is, which is very important to know if it's a common mold
Right.
that presents itself as like pet allergies or hay fever allergies, and some people would react to it, some other, or whether it's a more dangerous mold. Often people generically call it black mold. There's scientific names for it, and it's important to know that for the health of the people, people in the residence, but it's also for treating it. You have to know what kind of mold it is to effectively treat it as well. So if we don't physically see signs of mold, then we recommend air samples, again, on each floor of the house. And based upon the results, we would then we'll get the lab results back, and then we'll make recommendations in our report as to what, if no mold was found, in generally you're good. You've been professionally tested, and your home's safe to live in, even if you do have mold allergies. If the mold's high, then we will usually recommend, again, a mold remediation company, because our inspections are visual. We don't tear walls apart, or we try to do it. And we do have the ability, if you have a suspicion that you have mold behind a wall, we have the ability to drill a 3/8 inch hole, and I have cameras that can look inside. My air quality machines can actually draw air from within a wall to be able to actually see if we could do one outside in the middle of the basement, and then draw an air sample from behind a hidden in a hidden wall, and we could do it behind the baseboard, pull a baseboard off and drill a little
Right.
hole, just to see if there is in fact hidden mold in the walls. Couple things. If we do see mold, in something that we believe is bacterial growth in the form of mold, then we can take contact samples. I can take a swab, or I prefer actually it's a slide, kind of like we used to use in science.
Microscope.
Old microscope. Yeah, in school, it's that same concept. As it's a slide, and it has I can remove the cover on it, and I can literally go around, and it's adhesive, and take samples of the mold, and put it in a container. Whether we do air samples or whether we do contact samples, all the samples are we use a chain of custody form, so that we make sure that where was it taken, when was it taken, what time was it taken, what's the serial number of the sample. All that information we put it on a chain of custody form. We use FedEx, and we overnight all of our samples to our lab. They usually receive them by 10:30 the next day. These days, the mail delivery can sometimes be subject, but we typically, 2 days is normally the maximum. We get same day service from our lab, and so we if we overnighted it today, the lab would have it by 10:30 tomorrow, and by 6 p.m. tomorrow night, I would have results from the lab. So it's a pretty quick turnaround. And one of the reasons is, especially if it's a real estate transaction, usually you have this 10-day window.
Absolutely.
And then in home inspection, mold inspections are coming now. It's been 3-4 days into. Well, we've got to turn it around pretty quickly in that case. In other cases, it's not as important if we have it in 24 or 48 hours.
Right.
And like I said, so we'll have what we produce then is a report that we generate that has all the pictures we've taken, all our findings, recommendations, next steps, as well as the report from the lab, the actual scientific report with all the scientific names and everything they would get with the mold inspection.
Another service that you offer is radon testing.
Yes.
I don't know that a lot of people are maybe familiar with that process or what it means if you have a positive test for radon. So if you could talk a little bit about kind of how that works, what it is, the risk factors involved if you do have it, and kind of what the remediation is of that if you do find it in a property.
Sure. Thanks, Josh. So radon, I agree. It's an unknown to most people unless you live in an area that is known for high radon, where it's kind of the talk of the town, or everybody's buying a house knows that's a high radon area, and those exist in the country. We in this geography, West Virginia, Ohio, Kentucky, this area is kind of a middle zone. Rather than getting scientific, it's definitely not low here, but it's also not really high here.
Right.
But the EPA sets the standards. Radon is governed by the Environmental Protection Agency nationwide. So I'll go into that a little more detail. But what radon is naturally occurring in the soils and rocks in our Earth. It's nothing you can't do anything about it. We basically build homes on top of the Earth, and depending on the geography and the makeup of the rocks and soil in the Earth where you live, could be radioactive, scary term to a lot of people, radioactive material in the ground. And what radon is actually a gas given off by the radon decay product. So as radon's decaying in the soils and rocks below our houses, then it gives off a gas that's odorless, so it's odorless, colorless, you can't see it, you can't smell it, you have no idea you're breathing it. And so that is measured in picocuries per cubic liter. So picocuries is a really small number.
Everybody knows that.
Yeah, everybody knows that. So, but it basically what it is based upon a volume of air. So how many
how many little things is in an air-filled box?
Yeah, how much radon is occurring in a certain amount of volume air? It's actually the same as with mold. If I do an air sample for mold, it's I draw 5 liters of air for 5 minutes, and then the lab knows exactly how to calculate how many mold spores per liter. Well, radon's similar, but it is radon decay products, and so it's occurring. It is occurring. We have no control over the fact. There's nothing you can do about it in the Earth. But what you can do is if it exists in your home, that's what the radon test does. We use a continuous radon monitor or an active radon monitor, and it's a very intelligent device. It sits in your home, and for a real estate transaction, EPA requires a minimum of a 48-hour test. Our device is intelligent such that once I set it, I program it, and start it, it takes a reading within a house once an hour for 48 hours. So 48 separate readings the device takes, which is I can connect my laptop to the device, and it's very intelligent, the report then, because you can see the ups and downs and the spikes. But as I said, it's measured in picocuries per cubic liter, and the EPA has set a standard that if it is 4 picocuries per cubic liter of air or higher, they recommend the home have radon mitigation performed. If it's 2.0 to 3.9, they encourage it. And they also encourage you to have a radon test done on a regular basis, because if it's that high and it's close, there's a chance it may go up. If it's below 2.0, then your house is clean. They're fine. No recommendations from the EPA. So if you do have high radon, and that would be defined specifically by the EPA, and there was a radon test will fail if it's 4.0 or above by EPA. If it's 3.9 or below, it will pass from a real estate transaction perspective. So if you have a 3.9 or below from real estate transaction, it'll pass. 4 or above, I would obviously let you know that. You'd have the reports from us with pictures and the report out of the device. And there are radon mitigation companies in the area. In our geography, there are radon mitigation companies, and that's what they specialize in. Real quick, what occurs? A house is usually built. The foundation is typically one of 3. It's either on a crawl space, it's on a basement, or it's on a cement slab. And so, in the case of the slab or the basement, which is also usually has a concrete slab in it, what happens is a radon mitigation company would drill a hole through the floor, the concrete floor, and most floors are built with there's gravel, and then there's usually plastic on top, and then the concrete and reinforced meshing and so forth is poured on top of that. So what the idea is, you draw a vacuum underneath the house. You actually draw air from underneath that concrete slab, and then you exhaust it outside. So the system's fairly simple. Is that and the cost of a radon mitigation system, at least in our geography, from my experience, is $1,500 to $3,000. So it's scary thinking, but it's not as if it's going to cost you $30,000 or $50,000 to get rid of this radon, or that there's any reason you shouldn't live in the house. These systems work.
So is it a system that is left in the house?
Yes, it runs 24 hours a day.
Okay.
So basically, you have a picture of 4-inch plumbing white PVC pipe. It comes up out of your in a utility room, in a corner closet of some appropriate place. It goes through the side of the house, and then there's an air fan mounted to that pipe on the outside, and then the pipe extended above it to above roof line.
Okay.
And usually, again, on the side of the house, the back of the house, least obscure, most obscure, I guess, possible. And it just power applied to it, and it just runs. It's just a really quiet fan that runs, and it's drawing the air from underneath your home and exhausting it outside.
Huh.
And then the radon mitigation companies are required to, so if I do a radon test, for the purposes of putting a radon mitigation system in, the EPA recommends that the radon mitigation company do one more test first, just to confirm that they agree with my readings, which up to this point has been 100%.
Right.
And then they must put the mitigation system in, and then they must run another test to ensure that the radon reading is now below 2.0. Sometimes I've come in. Some people want an independent person to come in to do the test, and sometimes that's me. We don't both have to do it. They usually do one anyway, because they don't want me. The radon mitigation company doesn't want me to come in and find out
and say that their
system didn't work.
Absolutely,
they want to know first so that they can do any fixing. Because sometimes when I say fixing, and this is their profession. So sometimes if it's a rather large house with a large basement and it's divided in a bunch of sections, they may need to put more than one fan in.
Right.
It may not be sufficient. And so they usually do all of that, but some people haven't hired us to come in and do an independent test to make sure that their house is safe and no longer an issue.
So you and I have talked previous to today. We've talked about kind of the market as it is right now with home buying, and properties are going quick. I talked to a realtor a week or so ago, and I want to say last quarter he said, to the listeners, don't exactly quote me on this, but I believe he said the average amount of time that a home is on the market right now in this area is 14 days. And that's unbelievable. Well, I say it's unbelievable. My home was on the market. I think we bought ours. It was on the market 4 days. But a lot of people are getting above what they call above quote. So for those listening who maybe don't know that, for years outside of this area, if you listed your home for, say, $250,000, that was kind of looked at as a starting point in metropolitan areas especially.
Right.
So whether it's Columbus, Charlotte, Cincinnati, wherever. $250,000, that is what you were willing to accept, but people came in and they made offers above that. Here it was a little different. It was, if you listed at 250, I as a buyer am going to come in and say, how about 240? And
Yes.
you already knew that that's what was going to happen.
Exactly.
So you already knew you were going to say, okay, 245 and we're good to go. I knew that that's the way it was going to happen as well. As a buyer, we meet in the middle and first come, first serve, basically.
Right.
With the housing market as it is now, you could have a house listed and within 2 or 3 days have multiple offers over the list price.
Yes.
So you're asking 250. Now somebody's coming and said, well, I'll give you 265. Somebody else is coming and said, I'll give you 270. And then that's where you get into a situation of person A said, I'll do 270. Person B said, I'll do 270. But person B said, my bank's not going to require a home inspection. You just save some money. Pick me, pick me.
Right.
How can you stress how important, even if it's not required, how does it work liability? So let's say I'm the seller and I know that they sign a paper saying I declined a home inspection.
Yes.
Is there still any liability things, or what do you see as the importance of getting that home inspection, making sure that you know what's going on? What are some of the dangers or the tripping points if I'm that person saying, I really don't think I'm going to get that home inspection. I really want this house, and that can get me a leg up.
Not just because I'm in the business.
Right.
But I recommend a home inspection, period. Regardless of the quality of the house, the size of the house, you're getting it from your uncle, the loan, whether it's VA, FHA, it doesn't matter. You should get a home inspection because a home inspection makes you a more informed buyer. So I'll stay that. But
Right.
In today's market, you're absolutely right. Because everyone is, like you say, bidding and getting into bidding wars, and houses are selling fast because people are, the demand is high, the inventory is low. People are trying to make their offers more attractive. That's
Right.
the bottom line, right? They're trying to make their offer more attractive. So pick me, and if you don't get a home inspection, and if we'll waive all inspections that aren't required by the state or my bank,
Right.
and in some cases, absolutely, that includes a home inspection. I think that the primary reason why people waive a home inspection is, again, you made the right point, but I'll clarify in my mind, is yes, to make your offer more attractive, but to ensure that the seller doesn't have any hiccups later. Right? In other words, if you say my bid is 270, contingent upon the results of the inspections,
Right.
then there's a chance that you as the offerer may come back and say, oh, now that I've had the inspection, I'm going to back out.
Right.
Well, in today's market, they don't want to lose those offers, right?
Exactly.
So just clarify as to why someone might be motivated to do that. And I get that. I understand that. And it may be the only thing you can do to get that house that's your dream house.
Right.
And so I understand why you as an individual might say, we're going to waive it. I would still get it done. I still recommend you let's just use your $270,000 example. Depending on the size of the house, our home inspection in ours, start at $350. Well,
Right.
I mean, wow. So let's just say you still buy this $270,000 house. I mean, the $350 is, what the closing, it's a
Right.
very small amount of money. So let's just say you do that. I would still get a home inspection and not make your offer contingent upon the results of the home inspection.
Right. Just for your own peace of mind.
Right. And because our home inspections are extremely detailed, and you get a very detailed report with lots of pictures. And a lot of people use our home inspection as project lists, now I own this home, and the inspector told us about all these things that we need to do. And so what people want a home inspection mostly for are safety items.
Mm-hmm.
That's actually the state of Ohio or West Virginia and Kentucky. All three require a home inspector to be licensed.
Right.
And they require us to follow a standard of practice by a major organization. And the job of a home inspector, by definition, in all three of those states, is really to identify the safety items that could cause hazard to the house or to the residents of the home, or to find a defect, a material defect in the home that could affect the value of the house.
Right.
And that's probably the biggest one. Does this house need a new roof? does this house need a new furnace and air conditioner? Does this house need foundation repairs? Well, clearly you want to know those things because we're talking tens of thousands of dollars. And I understand you want to get into this dream house of yours, but I think it's very important for you to understand what you've inherited. If you don't get an inspection in advance, or even make it contingent, you need to know. You need to be an informed buyer, even if it has no effect on you buying the house, because that way you know how to budget, you know what to plan for. And we have done those. We have done home inspections for people who have purchased a house, got in, didn't have a home inspection done, realized they're finding little things are constantly happening. They're constantly having to work on their house.
Right.
Where if they have someone like myself come in, I can really pinpoint the plumbing issues, the electrical issues, the roof issues, the leak around the chimney. I can point to things that you can proactively go get done so that you can enjoy your new house more, rather than every week or every month you're finding something else you're having to call someone to fix.
So, kind of wrapping up, we've detailed all the different services that you offer, why people should have these done. How can they get in contact with you to get a time set up for you to come and look at their property or whatever, the radon or the mold, or a home inspection for a transaction or for peace of mind? How do they contact Tri-State Smart Home Solutions?
There's one thing, if you don't mind, Josh, I was thinking about is maybe just a few seconds on why. The home inspection, we went pretty deep on why. Mold inspection, mold testing, the why is two major factors of why. One is health. So people can, breathing mold spores, you can get mold will actually grow in your lungs. If you breathe enough mold, and it can actually grow in your lungs, and you could have respiratory issues and health issues. The other thing is the mold is just an indication of bigger problems.
Right.
And so that's why mold testing is important. Radon, most people don't even know what radon is, let alone this fact, is radon is the second highest leading cause of lung cancer after smoking. And so that's hugely important. And it's colorless, odorless. You may have no idea that you're actually living in a residence that has radon until you have lung cancer. That's the only way you're going to know, is you will have lung cancer. The doctor will tell you that it's very likely because of breathing radon gas for decades. So contacting us. So we are Tri-State Smart Home Solutions. There's a Tri-State Smart Home Solutions LLC. We have a website, which which you don't have to put in much these days. It's actually, our website is smart, SMART, homesolutions.llc.com. We have a toll-free number, 888-970-1791, and we set up the toll-free number so that if you're in Kentucky, Ohio, West Virginia, it doesn't really matter, and we will, unless we're asleep, we will answer that number 24 hours a day, but we make ourselves available because we know that a lot of people work and they're trying to get all this done on the side, so evenings, weekend phone calls are fine.
Well, we appreciate you coming in, and again, if you have any questions or you need that number or contact information again, you can give us a call at the Chamber of Commerce as well, and we can point you in the right direction. We appreciate you stopping by, and hopefully people now have a better understanding of kind of some of the things that they need to keep an eye on when it comes to their home and their safety, and we can get some people who may need your services heading your way.
I appreciate the time, Josh, and the opportunity, and we love our seniors and veterans, and so we give discounts to those folks as well.
Fantastic. Well, that's going to do it for Talk of the Town this week. Join us next week for our newest episode. Again, you can find each individual episode on our social media channels on Fridays at noon, and then again on 93.1 WJEH FM on Sunday mornings during the 8 o'clock hour. Until next week, thanks for listening, and we'll see you then.